Hello. When my wife's toxic friends convinced her to pack her things and disappear for a week to teach me a lesson, they thought I would come crawling back, begging. Instead, I picked up the phone and made a call that would turn their little game upside down. While she was celebrating her victory with those bitter women, I was taking action they never saw coming. My name is Miles Doyle. I'm 42 years old, and I've spent the last 15 years building something I thought would last forever. Not just my marriage to Cindy, but also my tire installation business, which started as a single shop and grew into a network of 5 locations across our city. I worked tirelessly to provide for my family, my wife Cindy, who is 39, our 16-year-old son Dylan, and our 12-year-old daughter Emma. The irony is that success might have been what destroyed us. When I was struggling to get the first shop off the ground, working 16-hour days with grease under my nails, Cindy and I were solid. We were a team. She brought me dinner at the shop, helped with the books, even swept the floor when I was too exhausted to do it myself. But as the business grew and money started flowing in, something shifted. Cindy got a job at the bank downtown, saying she wanted her own career, her own identity. I fully supported that. I wanted her to be happy and to have something that was hers. What I didn't expect was that she would find herself a whole new group of friends who seemed determined to tear apart everything we'd built together. The first time I met Veronica Sterling, I knew she was bad news. She walked into our house like she owned the place, wearing clothes that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payments. Perfectly manicured nails, a designer purse, and an attitude that screamed entitlement. She was 45, divorced twice, and seemed to take pride in both failures like they were achievements. Veronica had this way of talking to Cindy that made my skin crawl. She'd make little comments about how Cindy was wasting her potential and how she deserved better than being tied down to a husband and kids. She'd talk about her own divorces like they were victories, bragging about how much money she got from each ex-husband. That should have been my first red flag. Any woman who celebrates destroying marriages shouldn't be welcomed into a married woman's life. But Cindy ate it up like gospel truth. Eleanor Doyle sat at her kitchen table, the very same one where she'd made me breakfast for 18 years before I moved out. Her gray hair was perfectly styled, and her blue eyes held the determined look I remembered from my childhood when she had something important to say. "Miles, we need to talk about your wife," she said, not bothering with small talk. I sighed and took a seat across from her. "Mom, please don't start." "Don't start what?" "Caring about my son and grandchildren?" Eleanor poured coffee into my favorite mug, the one with "World's Best Son" that she'd given me years ago. "I've been watching Cindy, and that woman is not the same person you married." She was right, but hearing it out loud made it real in a way I wasn't ready for. "Marriage has its ups and downs, Mom. You know that." Eleanor snorted. "Ups and downs are one thing. Complete personality changes are another." She took a sip of coffee before continuing. "Last Sunday at church, Cindy barely spoke to anyone. She used to light up the whole congregation with her smile. Now, she acts like being there is some kind of punishment." That hit home because I had noticed it too. Cindy used to love our church community, volunteered for every bake sale and charity drive. Now, she complained about having to go, said it was a waste of time. Just last week, she rolled her eyes when Pastor Miller asked about helping with the youth fundraiser. "And those friends of hers," Eleanor continued, her voice sharpening. "That Sterling woman, in particular. I've heard things about her around town, Miles. She's poison, and she's spreading it to your wife." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of everything I had been trying to ignore. "What kind of things?" "The kind that destroy families," my mother said firmly. "She brags about her divorces like trophies. Takes pride in how much money she got from each husband. Women like that can't stand to see other people happy in marriage because it reminds them of their own failures." Eleanor reached across the table and grabbed my hand with surprising strength. "Son, you need to fight for your family before it's too late. That woman is filling Cindy's head with nonsense, and if you don't put a stop to it, you're going to lose everything you've worked for." The coffee grew cold as my mother continued, telling me about conversations she'd overheard at the grocery store. Warnings from other women in the community about Veronica's influence. It painted a picture I didn't want to see, but couldn't ignore anymore. "Your father, God rest his soul, would have put his foot down the first time some troublemaker tried to come between us," Eleanor said. "Sometimes being a good husband means protecting your marriage from people who want to destroy it. even if one of those people is your own wife. I drove home that day with my mother's words echoing in my head, knowing she was right, but not sure I was ready for the fight that was coming. I hope you're having a nice visit. Veronica smiled, that fake smile of hers, the one that never reached her eyes. Miles, we were just having some girl talk. Nothing that would interest you, I'm sure. Actually, it sounded pretty interesting from where I was standing, I replied, meeting her gaze directly, especially the part about controllers and leashes. Care to elaborate? The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Cindy's face flushed red, either from embarrassment or anger. I couldn't tell which. The other two women suddenly became very interested in their wine glasses. We should probably get going, the redhead said, clearly uncomfortable with the direction things were heading. Thanks for the wine, Cindy. After they left, gathering their purses with the speed of people fleeing a crime scene, Cindy turned on me like I'd committed some terrible crime. How dare you embarrass me like that in front of my friends, she hissed. Embarrass you? I stared at my wife in disbelief. I came home to find you talking about our marriage like it's some kind of prison sentence. How do you think that made me feel? The worst part about watching your marriage fall apart isn't the sleepless nights or the cold shoulders. It's seeing your kids try to navigate the wreckage while pretending everything's normal. Dylan and Emma weren't stupid. They could feel the tension in the house, see how their mother had changed, hear the arguments that stopped the moment they walked into a room. Dylan started spending more time at the tire shop, claiming he wanted to learn the business better. But I knew the real reason. Home wasn't comfortable anymore. The kid would show up after school, grab a wrench, and work on whatever project needed doing. We'd work side by side in companionable silence, both of us avoiding the elephant in the room. Dad, he said one afternoon while we were rotating tires on Mrs. Henderson's Honda. Is everything okay with you and Mom? I stopped what I was doing and looked at my 16-year-old son. This young man, who was already taller than me and had his mother's eyes. How do you explain to your kid that the woman who raised him was becoming someone you didn't recognize? Your mom's going through some changes, son, I said. Sometimes adults need time to figure things out. Dylan nodded, but I could see he wasn't buying the diplomatic answer. She's different now. She used to ask about my baseball games, help with homework. Now she barely looks up from her phone when I talk to her. That hurt because it was true. Cindy used to be the kind of mother who made homemade cookies for school events and knew all of Dylan's friends by name. Now, she acted like parenting was an inconvenience that interrupted her social life. Emma was handling it differently. My 12-year-old daughter had started having what she called tummy aches that kept her home from school. The school counselor called last week, concerned about Emma's grades slipping and her withdrawal from activities she used to love. When I talked to Emma about it, sitting on her bed surrounded by soccer trophies and stuffed animals, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Why does Mommy love us anymore? She asked. The question hit me like a truck. Baby girl, Mommy loves you very much. She's just confused right now. She never comes to my games anymore, Emma whispered. And when I try to tell her about school, she says she's too busy or tired. I pulled my daughter close, feeling her small frame shake with quiet sobs. This wasn't just about Cindy and me anymore. These toxic women weren't just destroying my marriage. They were destroying my children's relationship with their mother. That night, after both kids were asleep, I made a decision. I couldn't control what Cindy chose to do or who she chose to listen to, but I could protect my children from the fallout. They deserved better than walking on eggshells in their own home. The discovery came by accident, the way these things usually do. I was balancing our business accounts when I noticed some unusual activity on our joint personal checking account. Large withdrawals, transfers I didn't recognize, payments to places I'd never heard of. At first, I figured it was identity theft or some kind of banking error. Then I started digging deeper. $5,000 transferred to something called Sterling Consulting. Another $3,000 to a spa in the next county. $2,000 for what looked like a shopping spree at some boutique downtown. All of this happened over the past 6 months, all authorized by Cindy. I sat in my office at the main shop, staring at bank statements that told the story of financial betrayal. My wife had been systematically moving money out of our accounts, spending it on God knows what without saying a word to me. Money that was supposed to be for the kids' college funds, for our retirement, for emergencies. The Sterling Consulting payment was what really got my blood boiling. I made some calls and found out it wasn't a consulting business at all. It was Veronica's personal account. Cindy had been paying this woman, literally paying her to destroy our marriage. When I confronted Cindy that evening, she didn't even try to deny it. "So what if I spent some money?" she said, crossing her arms defiantly. "Half of everything you make is mine anyway. I shouldn't have to ask permission to spend my own money." "Your own money?" I stared at her in disbelief. "That money was for Emma's braces, for Dylan's college applications. We have plans for that money." "Plans you made," Cindy shot back. "You always decide everything, Miles. Where we live, how we spend money, what the kids should do. Well, maybe I'm tired of living according to your plans." "Those plans included taking care of our family," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "What exactly did you pay Veronica Sterling $5,000 for?" Cindy's face went pale. She hadn't expected me to trace that particular transaction. "That's none of your business." "It's absolutely my business when it's our money." I pulled out the bank statements and spread them on the kitchen table. "Look at this, Cindy. Look what you've done. You spent almost $15,000 in 6 months on what? Spa treatments, designer clothes, paying some bitter divorcee to tell you how terrible your husband is." For a moment, I saw something like shame flicker across her face. But then her expression hardened again, and I knew Veronica's poison had sunk too deep. "I deserve those things," she said. "I've sacrificed 20 years of my life for this family. If I want to spend some money on myself for once, that's my right." That's when I knew our marriage was beyond saving. The woman I'd married would never have stolen money from her children's future to fund her midlife crisis. I should have known something was brewing when Cindy started packing a bag on that Tuesday morning. She was moving around the bedroom with a kind of determined energy I hadn't seen from her in months, folding clothes like she was preparing for battle rather than a simple trip. "Where are you going?" I asked, watching her stuff toiletries into a small travel case. "I'm going to stay with Veronica for a while," she replied, not looking up. "We both need some time to think about what we really want from this marriage. We both need time." I stood there in my work clothes, coffee mug in hand, trying to process what I was hearing. I'm not the one who's been stealing money and bad-mouthing our family to a group of bitter divorced women. That got her attention. She straightened up and fixed me with a look that could have frozen hell over. "This is exactly what I'm talking about, Miles," she said, zipping up the bag with sharp, angry motions. "You always have to be right. You always have to be the victim. Well, maybe it's time you learn what it feels like to be alone for a while." I set my coffee down on the dresser, feeling something cold and final settling in my chest. "So, this is what your friends advised? Pack a bag and leave your family to teach your husband a lesson?" "My friends told me I deserve better than this," Cindy shot back. "They told me that if I disappear for a week, you'll realize how much you need me and start treating me with the respect I deserve." There it was. My wife's bad friends had told her to leave for a week to teach me a lesson, just like my mother had warned me they would. These women had turned abandoning your family into some kind of power play. "And if I don't come crawling back, begging you to return?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Cindy's confidence faltered for just a second, but then she lifted her chin defiantly. "Then I guess we'll both know where we stand." She grabbed her bag and headed for the bedroom door, pausing only to deliver what she clearly thought was her killing blow. "Dylan and Emma are going to stay with your mother while I'm gone," she said. "I've already arranged it. That way, you can focus on thinking about what you've done wrong without any distractions." I watched my wife walk out of her bedroom, heard her footsteps on the stairs, listened to the front door slam behind her. Then, I sat down on the edge of the bed we'd shared for 15 years and tried to figure out how everything had gone so wrong. But as I sat there, something interesting happened. Instead of the panic or desperation Cindy and her friends probably expected, I felt something else entirely. Relief. For the first time in months, the house was quiet. The tension was gone. The constant walking on eggshells was over. Maybe this week apart would teach someone a lesson. All right, just not the lesson Cindy was expecting. After Cindy left, I called my mother to let her know the kids would be coming to stay with her. Eleanor's voice was grim but unsurprised when I explained the situation. "I told you this was coming, son," she said. "That woman thinks she can manipulate you like she's been manipulating everyone else. What are you going to do about it?" I looked around the house that suddenly felt different without Cindy's presence. Cleaner somehow, less toxic. "I'm going to call a lawyer, Mom." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Are you sure that's what you want?" "I'm sure it's what I need to do," I replied. Cindy made her choice when she decided to let her friends turn her against her own family. If she wants to play games, she's about to learn that I don't play games when it comes to protecting my children. After I hung up with my mother, I sat in my home office and did something I never thought I'd have to do. I started researching divorce attorneys in our area. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Cindy was probably celebrating her freedom at Veronica's house, I was taking steps to make that freedom permanent. The law firm of Bradley and Associates had good reviews and a solid reputation for handling complex divorces involving business assets. I made an appointment for that same afternoon, figuring if I was going to do this, I might as well do it right. Another divorce to add to their collection. She dropped the papers and reached for my arm. "Miles, please. We can work this out. I'll stop seeing them. I'll change." But I gently pulled away from her touch. "It's too late for that. You made your choice when you chose their poison over our family." The divorce took 8 months to finalize, but those were 8 months of clarity instead of confusion. Cindy fought it at first, tried to claim I was being unreasonable and cruel. But when the financial records came out during discovery, showing exactly how much money she'd stolen and where it had gone, her attorney advised her to settle quickly. I kept the tire business and our house. Cindy got a fair settlement, but nothing like what she would have received if she hadn't been caught stealing from our accounts. The judge was particularly unimpressed with her explanation that the money was for personal growth and self-discovery. Dylan chose to live with me full-time. At 17, he was old enough to make that decision, and he'd seen enough of his mother's behavior to understand what had really happened. He's working at the main shop every day after school now, learning the business from the ground up. Emma splits her time between both houses, but she spends most weeknights with me. Cindy tries to be a good mother when she has her, but the damage to their relationship runs deep. Kids don't forget when a parent chooses toxic friends over family. As for me, I'm doing better than I expected. The business is thriving. Turns out, not having someone constantly undermining your confidence is good for productivity. I've opened a 6th location and hired 3 new employees. About 6 months after the divorce was final, I started seeing someone new. Ashley Thompson is 30 years old, works as a nurse at the Children's Hospital, and has never been married. She's kind, supportive, and genuinely interested in my kids and my business. Most importantly, she doesn't have any bitter divorced friends filling her head with poison about men and marriage. We're taking things slow, but for the first time in years, I'm optimistic about the future. Dylan likes her, and Emma is warming up to her gradually. That's all I can ask for. Cindy is still friends with Veronica Sterling and the rest of that toxic group. From what I hear around town, she's dating some guy 15 years younger than her and living in a tiny apartment across town. Veronica convinced her that this was living her best life. But from the few times I've seen Cindy at school events, she looks tired and older than her years. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how things ended, if I wish I'd fought harder to save a marriage. The answer is no. A marriage is supposed to be a partnership between 2 people who respect each other and work toward common goals. What I had with Cindy at the end wasn't a marriage. It was a hostage situation. My advice to any man going through something similar is simple. Don't let toxic people poison your family. If your spouse chooses bitter friends over your marriage, believe what they're showing you and protect yourself accordingly. Sometimes the lesson someone tries to teach you isn't the lesson they intended. Bye-bye.